Thank you very much for that nice and kind presentation. So I'll try to be up to the expectations that you have been creating for me. So I'm going to do a brief presentation with some figures on the understanding we have on the situation of the innovation system in Spain, a very brief description of our strategy, and finally, like Juan has said, we will be doing some question and answer session. So we have been deploying a very intensive innovation policy in Spain in the past years, and we think that this has helped us have a very high economical growth, and therefore we are very satisfied with the results of this policy of improving and promoting innovation, and our plan is to reinforce our efforts along that line. So I would like to present you some figures on the Spanish situation in terms of input indicators to the system. The first one, which is very frequently used, is the expenditure in research and development over GDP, which is what the European Union now calls investment intensity. Investment intensity, which is basically internal expenditures in research and development over GDP. So this figure that you have there is the evolution of this indicator for Spain. And as you may see, in year 2000, we were in 0.94 over the GDP, and in year 2008, we are in 135. Yesterday, it was released a provisional figure for 2009 by the National Institute of Statistics, and this provisional figure, that it's still not confirmed at all, showed a slight increase. So for year 2009, we expect to have also slight increase in our expenditure over GDP. What I would like to highlight is the net increment, and the net increment is an increment of 43.6%. This is extremely large, especially if we compare it with the European average. The European average has been almost flat in this period, and the increase in the investment in research and development over GDP for the European average has been much lower than this one. If we see the private research and development expenditure, which is an indicator in which Europe is well below the United States, which is one of the references we have. Also, we have seen a very big increase. In this case, the increase has been even larger than the net increase. So the private sector is coping with the negative difference that they have over this indicator for the public sector. And we see that for the same period, we have had an increment of 163% in the investment by private firms in research and development. For this year, 2009, we expect probably a similar figure or maybe a slight decrease because the economical situation is very hard. But I would like to see this in long-term view, in historical terms, not just the situation between 2008 and 2009, which, as I say, our expectation is that it will not be a big increase for sure, so it will be a small increase or a small decrease. But if we see again in historical terms, we see that the trend is very positive. If we see a number of researchers employed in the private sector, which is another indicator that we consider very important, again we see a net increase. In this case, the increase for the period 2000-2008 is 122% of increase. So this means that we have more than doubled the people that has been devoting their time in companies to do research. So this is for the inputs. I would like also to present a few figures about the outputs. So in terms of the outputs also, we have seen a very positive turn. First, in EPO patents, European patents, we have seen that Spain also has had a huge increase in the number of patent applications. We see that in the year 2000, we were only making 525 patent applications, and in the year 2008, this was 1,525. Again, we see a very large increase of 190%. That shows the good results of the policies and the behavior of the innovation trend within Spain. The scientific publications, here we have a very good indicator. So what we present here is the net percentage within the total in the world. So this is not an absolute indicator than the previous one. This is a relative indicator in respect to the countries, to all the other countries in the world. And in this case, we see also that there has been a net increase since the year 2000. We had 2.26% of the scientific publication worldwide. And in year 2008, we have 2.75. This is a very high figure, meaning that Spain right now is the 9th country in the world with most production of scientific publications, which is for the size of our population of 45 million inhabitants, extremely good. So again, this is showing a very positive trend. Now, if we go to net growth, because probably you know very well that many of the indicators could be somehow misleading, because you could say, okay, how do you compute the number of people that's doing research is somehow subjective, or you could do a very big increase in the expenditure, but the expenditure could not be having a good effect in the economy. So what matters in the end, of course, reducing everything to a single indicator is, on our view, the per capita income. This is the number, the average amount of value that every inhabitant in the country is producing. And this is usually used the per capita income. In this case, we are using US dollars per inhabitant to compare with the same currency, because this is for the period 1986 to the year 2006. So it's a very long period, even before the euro was created. So we have normalized it to dollars per inhabitant. So if we see the progression of this indicator from the year 1996, which is when Spain entered the European Union, and to us this was a big milestone because it's when our economy was exposed to competition with European companies, and of course initially it was very hard for our companies to compete in the open market with European companies that were much more advanced in terms of internationalization, in terms of technology. So since we entered in the European Union up to 2006, to have a round figure of 20 years, we see the performance of our economy. And we see that year after year, along 20 years, along several economical crises, we have been outperforming the economy of Germany, France, Italy, or United Kingdoms, which we consider the most developed countries in our environment and with a similar size in terms of population. It's not easy to compare Germany or France with Luxembourg or Spain because it's very different type of countries. Of course, I'm putting an extreme. But I think that Spain can be reasonably compared as an objective, obviously, with France, Italy, and United Kingdom, which are around 50 million inhabitants, or Germany, that now after reunification is around 90 million inhabitants, roughly. So we see that Spain has been experiencing an increase of 344% in per capita income, while Germany has had only 172, which is very good, of course, because they were already in a very, very high place, or France has been having 165, which again is very good because they were in a very high place. So Spain started lower, but we have been experiencing a much higher growth. Right now, in absolute terms, Spain is roughly similar to Italy in per capita income, while we started much behind, but we still are below Germany, France, or United Kingdom. So obviously, we still have a way to go. Now, what are our plans to further improve innovation within the economy? We have designed, along the past months, a document that we call the Spanish Strategy for Innovation. In Spanish, the acronym is E2I, that's how we call it, the E2I. And this document is designed to have a long-term plan in 2 periods. First period, 2009, which is when we started to define the plan, although we have it almost finished. We hope to approve it in a government board meeting either this week or the next one. It will be formally approved. And there's a second period for 2015-2020. And the plan that we have is to completely perform a structural transformation of our socio-economical base, which is extremely ambitious, we know. But based on our previous good results, we are absolutely convinced that promoting innovation is the only way to go. and therefore we are willing to deploy a very big plan, horizontally split among different ministries, although this is mainly pushed or mainly developed by one ministry, which is the Spanish Ministry of Science and Innovation. Innovation policy, as you well know, is a horizontal policy. It's not like health. You have health ministry, you build hospitals, you hire physicians, and you provide healthcare to the citizens. And you don't need much interoperation or much coordination with other ministries. You have to provide security to the people, then you hire policemen, you have police cars, and you provide them with a security service for the people. So that's the Ministry of Interior. But horizontal policy is much more difficult because you have to change many, many things among many different sectors. You have to change things in the economy, you have to change things in taxes, you have to change things in defense, you have to change things in many, many sectors. So it's not just the Ministry of Innovation doing things. We have to have a plan, and then we have to collaborate with the other ministries in order to make it a reality. This is why this plan is going to be approved by the government as a whole. It's going to be approved by all the ministers, not just a plan from the Ministry of Science and Innovation. Okay, so this plan, I'm going to make it a very, very big summary, so I'm going to compress it in just one slide. But since then, we have a question-answer session in case any of you would like to have any specific question about either the performance of the Spanish system in the past years or the plan. Of course, I'm very happy to clarify. So this plan is defined along 5 axes. And these 5 axes shape what we call the Pentagon of Innovation. So basically, we want to deploy sets of actions in 5 big blocks. And then we have a central Pentagon, which is a kind of different actions that doesn't fit precisely in any of these 5 big axes. The first one is funding, finance. In Europe, we consider, and Spain is not an exception, the contrary, I think the situation in Spain is probably below the one of the most developed countries, is funding innovation activities. We have capital markets that are usually quite conservative, and the private capital is not very much willing to go into high-risk, high-return initiatives. They prefer low-risk, low-return. So this is bad, because obviously any startup, any new company, if it's successful, needs a huge amount of funding to grow, to capture a significant amount of the market that is targeting. So funding is a very, very important issue, and we consider that funding, as I say in Europe, is not well prepared to support innovation activities in all the range, starting from seed capital, venture capital, alternative capital markets, all the way since the company is starting, is consolidating, is growing, we consider it's not very well funded. It's well funded once it's a large company. Once you are Telefonica, or you are Siemens, or you are Thomson, or you are a large company, then everything goes well, because the government likes you very much, you have very good contact with the national government that considers you a flagship company of the country, and you need a lot of support. All the banks love you very much also, because you have a wonderful track record. If you have 150 years, like some of our European companies we are very much proud of, which is good, even better. You can say, I've been 150 years providing profit. But if you're a company starting, then the situation is much different, and it's much, much harder to get this capital along all the way. So funding issues need to be very much changed. And I'm not talking just about providing the funds. It's providing the regulation of the alternative markets, the regulation of the taxation on business angels, the regulation of funds investing in high-risk, high-return initiatives. Many of these things make it difficult in Europe. So it's not just that the European investors are more conservative. It's a structural problem. Second axis is the axis of the markets. In the markets, we have mainly 2 big actions. One of the actions is market orientation of all innovation activities. We consider that on our past experience in funding innovation, on some occasions, I would say on 2 or many occasions, the focus is on the technology and not in the market. So basically you say, I have a wonderful technology, I'm going to try to see how can I sell it. And we think this is a very wrong approach. We think that the approach should be the opposite. I have this market opportunity, and now I should develop a technology that is the best to cover it. And I could provide many examples. So you detect the market opportunity, and then you develop the technology. Of course, I know that on many occasions they go hand in hand, because the market is created by the technology. So I'm not going to say that technology is not important. I'm not going to say technology is not important. I'm only saying that market focus is essential. Even if you have a successful technology, but you fail in the market, then the company is a failure. And obviously, our goal is to have successful companies in average. In average, obviously, we understand that innovation is inherently risky, and therefore you need failures. If you don't have enough failures, this means you are doing something wrong. Of course, it's not that we are going to fail intentionally, but typically, if you are not having enough failures, typically means you are not doing high-risk, high-return initiatives, and then you are falling in the same problem I've just described. So market orientation is an essential thing, and the second component of the market orientation is public procurement. The public governments in developed countries have a huge amount of the economy. Usually around 40% of the economy in developed countries, roughly, is controlled by the governments. In Spain, it's around 40% also, so we are not an exception. And out of that 40%, 13 points, so 13% over GDP, no, not 13% of 40, 13% net over GDP is public procurement. 13%, it's incredible. While in Europe, we are devoting something like 2% in the most developed countries, as the global expenditure for research and development, meaning that public procurement is 600% over the total budget, public and private, for promoting innovation. So obviously, public procurement is a huge tool that should be used in much larger use to promote innovation. It's obvious that you cannot devote the full 13% for innovation, but you can use that as a leverage in as many cases as you can to behave in an innovative way. And this again comes to the administration. I have started somehow criticizing, if you want, the private investors, saying that the financial capital market is not innovative enough. So in this second axis, what I'm saying is that governments in Europe are not innovative enough. They are very conservative in their own procurement, in their own handling of the economy, and typically they want products and services that have been tried 10 times or 20 times. Of course, never, ever, ever developed a new product or service, something that has been very well proven. And actually, this is not because the people making the decisions are not willing to take the risk. Many times, regulations makes it very difficult or impossible. In Spain, for example, making innovation purchases, meaning to buy something that doesn't exist today, was illegal up to last year. So this government changed the regulation because it was illegal. Because you know that public procurement is heavily regulated because it's designed to avoid any possible, let's call it, collusion issues. That's the main target, which of course is important because obviously it's public money and you have to avoid collusion. But it has been taking so much to avoid collusion that leaves so narrow margin for decisions that in the end we are losing a very powerful tool, and we are giving a very bad example to the private sector because the governments are the first ones to behave in an extremely conservative way. And this is, as I say, something to be changed. So market is a second big area in which we can have lots of actions. Internationalization. I think that the European market proved for Spain a huge opportunity. It was a big threat. When we entered, many companies were saying that it was a big mistake, that all our industrial sector was going to be completely wiped out by stronger European companies, but the reality has proven that this has not been so. Of course, many companies were wiped out, of course, but that was a very healthy situation because companies that were not competitive went bankrupt. But companies that were strong saw the European market as an opportunity and began making sales in different countries. So we think now that Spain and Europe as a whole should have a much higher internationalization of their economies. And we should become truly global, selling in Asia, South America, Africa, and of course, Europe and the United States. So internationalization is something absolutely essential. This is for all activities, not only for sales, but also for development. We think that there are cases, not always, but there are cases in which some initiatives are so difficult or so challenging that can only be carried out through international cooperation for the development. So you share the risks, you share the investment, of course also you have to share the profits. Therefore, internationalization of the economies is an absolute must. The fourth axis is territorial cooperation, and this is something very difficult to express politically, because in Europe and in Spain, we have several levels of administration. We have the regional administration, the national administration, the member state, and then the European administration. So we have three levels of administration, plus in some countries, they have also the municipalities that have very strong capacity to promote innovation. So we could have even 4 levels of administration. 4 levels of administration plus a range of very diverse geographical situations throughout Europe. This means that we have right now a fragmented market and a fragmented policy, which is not bad in itself, because a large organization cannot have a central coordination just like that. I think we have seen very clear failures of central planification of the economy. So it's clear you need structure. However, this structure that we have now has a very significant margin for improvement in collaboration. I think we see too often in Europe and also within member states, countries or regions that are so concerned in competing with the region besides or the country besides, that in the end, the sale is made by a company from a faraway country. So we are so concerned in competing between country X and country Y, many times they share a border, that in the end it's a Chinese company or a US company that finally gets the contract, which is extremely, extremely, extremely bad. So we should look into countries like China or Brazil or India, or the States, in which you do not see a delegation from Texas and a delegation from Massachusetts trying to get the contract for their companies. Typically, you see a single country effort. If there are 2 companies, which there is the case, both of them are supported by the government. It's not a tension between both of them, because their position is either if company A from the States or company B from the States gets the contract, is good for the union. So we should support both. And you don't have these competing efforts within the regions or within the European Union among member states. So we think there is a margin to improve collaboration between member states, collaboration between regions, trying to compete together with other regions of the world. I think that the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, are huge economies, extremely cohesive, very, very cohesive economically and politically, and with very clear policies in their innovation and in their internationalization strategies. And I think we should also look into the good results they're having and also apply that to ourselves. It's true that building a union is a historical process. I think that Europe is making excellent progress, so I'm not criticizing. I'm just trying to put some points in the future for the agenda. Basically, what I'm saying is the fact that we have a single market within Europe doesn't mean we have finished. I think we have many, many things still to do within the European environment to improve the coordination of our economies. And the last axis, which is the most important, undoubtedly, is the people. We have to put a huge focus on the people, because in the end, who does the innovation? Is it the companies? No. Is it the government? It's not the company, it's not the government. The innovation is responsibility of individuals. It's men and women, usually very reduced in a company. It's just one or two people who has a vision and has the energy and the ability and the persistence to fight for that vision and to try to make it a reality, and in some cases succeed and in some cases fail. Some cases fail because it was just not possible, it was too soon or too late. Some cases fail because they made mistakes. But many times they fail without having made any mistake. Everything they did was right. So success or failure doesn't always mean that there was a responsibility of the people. So we have to understand also that failures should not be associated with bad management, which is too frequent in the European environment and also in Spain. So in other cultures, they have an understanding that failure in innovation is sometimes just because, again, the conditions were not suitable, not because the situation was mismanaged. Of course, if it's mismanaged, then it's responsibility of the people, but not always is the case. So we have to make a big, big improvement in the people, not only in the training. So we need to be training people, but also in attracting the best people from all the world. And this is very difficult nowadays, because now it's a difficult economical situation and there is a very big social tension. And many people in the street think that immigration is very bad. And I think this is absolutely wrong when we talk of immigration related with innovation. Some countries have been very successful because they have succeeded in attracting the best people in the world to their economies, train them or complete their training, and give them the opportunity to launch their business initiatives within the countries. If you see success cases in countries like the one I'm describing, I'm sure you will be able to point out many different ones of this profile. Europe is now, and Spain also within Europe, much below other regions in the world in attracting the best talent and retaining it. So Europe should make a big effort in attracting and retaining talent, in training them, and also a complete cultural improvement in the attitude of the population towards risk and towards entrepreneurial activities. In Europe, the culture is too much of the protective welfare state. People doesn't have a big incentive to try to launch a company, to try to take risks, to try to do something, to have a dream and pursue it. So this here something we will improve, and this axis is a very broad axis covering many, many different things. So these are the 5 axes. As I said, we have some other activities that doesn't fit exactly into either of these axes, and we associate them to the center, which we call the Pentagon of Innovation. So this is, in very broad terms, the main lines along which we have this Spanish strategy for innovation being designed. Now, what are my conclusions? And with this I finish. I'm over time, but Juan told me that I could make a longer presentation and then we can have questions. So what are our conclusions? Now, Spain has been making big efforts to turn its economy into a sustainable economy based on knowledge and innovation along the past years. And these efforts are good, but the fact is that our current situation is still below the most developed countries in our environment. We compare our indicators with the indicators of Germany and France, which are probably the countries we are trying to target, and we see that still we are not there. So this is obviously something we have to work harder. So our efforts are going to be targeting again within promoting innovation within Spain. Why? Because we have seen that the efforts we have been doing in the past have been steadily producing very good results. And this has encouraged us to pursue deeper and further reforms of our economy to go along the path of innovation. Right now, as I have just described very briefly, the Spanish strategy for innovation is a very ambitious plan that we expect to produce a structural change in our socio-economical base in 2 phases, one for 2015 and one for 2020. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm open to any question that you may have. I will try to address. Thank you very much.